As somebody who is probably overdue for a midlife crisis, I've often thought about what I would do when that time comes. I mean, I'd be open to buying an expensive sports car if I had the money, traveling the world when we get out of this whole pandemic thing, and maybe even going skydiving or bungee jumping. But there is one midlife cliche that I won't be doing, and that's mountain climbing. Now, let me tell you, if I was on the fence before, playing through the new game Insurmountable has more than convinced me that I don't want to have anything to do with an activity where you go into something called the death zone. If I'm gonna risk my life and safety ascending a mountain during a blizzard, then it's gonna be when I'm warm, eating delicious food, and in the comfort of my own home. Now that is a practical midlife crisis. Alright, so a scientist, journalist, and thrill-seeking adventurer decide to climb a mountain. Now that may sound like the start of a joke, but it's actually the setup to Insurmountable, a game where we take one of those brave people up a procedurally generated mountain in hopes of making a name for themselves in the history books. And that feat is no joke, because our climbers only have one life to live, and ascending these 3 mountains will take strength, strategy, and a whole lot of luck. Although it's mostly about surviving treacherous conditions, Insurmountable plays a lot like a strategy game. Instead of putting us in direct control of the climber, it's our job to choose where we want them to go on the mountain. In that sense, it's similar to a board game, with every part of the map being displayed like a grid. We'll be able to see how much energy it takes and what kind of terrain we'll be walking and climbing on. All of which will go into your decision-making as you slowly work your way up the steep cliffs. You'll have to weigh the risks of taking a more dangerous shortcut against how much energy and oxygen you'll spend going the long way. And hey, don't forget about finding a place to sleep, because you definitely don't want to get stuck in one of those nighttime blizzards. These are the types of decisions that you're going to need to make just to get to the top of that mountain. Now, while it may make sense to climb as fast as possible, there are a lot of reasons to explore the massive maps. You'll find that there are a lot of spaces with icons over them, which will trigger some sort of story beat. For example, we'll find treasure icons that'll give us a chance to add more food, gear, and even an extra tent to the inventory. Another icon will have you interacting with strangers and animals, which can go in all kinds of different directions. You'll sometimes find caves that not only make for a great resting point, but also they have secret paths and hidden items. Now, you won't be able to hit all of these icons, but there is a lot of value in exploring the environments and not just taking the most direct path. Of course, the story beats aren't just limited to the spaces with icons. As the climbing becomes more dangerous, you'll run into random scenarios that'll put our adventure into a lot of bad situations. It's common to twist your ankle on loose rocks or hurt your shoulder after a bad fall. Events that will limit your mobility and make getting to the top just that much more dangerous. And you'll find that some of these setbacks don't just go away after you're done climbing the first mountain, because they stick around as the character attempts the next 2 peaks. Oh boy, my poor climber was battered and bruised by the time she got to the top of the final mountain, to the point where I seriously wondered if we were even going to make it at all. No matter which character you select, they are definitely going to need a lot of medical attention and rest by the time they get done with these 3 climbs. Now, I cannot overstate it enough. The choices you make in this game can be the difference between life and death. What at first looks like a simple game where you point and click your way to victory quickly becomes a harrowing balancing act where you need to stay healthy and use your rations sparingly. And all this is before you get to the death zone, which is the most dangerous part of the mountain where you barely have enough oxygen to breathe. Look, you definitely don't want to run out of oxygen at the top of the mountain, because you still have to come back down in order to complete your mission and see another day. I think we can all agree that getting to the highest peak is pointless if you die on the way down, and that is going to be your fate if you don't plan well. especially as you get into the more challenging mountains and difficulties. For a game that is relatively slow-paced, Insurmountable can be incredibly intense. There were times when I was scaling the third and final mountain when I had to remind myself to keep breathing. Look, I mean it when I say it, that this game can be harrowing. The fact that this game is so tense and so draining is a testament to its simple approach and effective yet minimal storytelling. You're never really keeping an eye on too many gauges, and the gameplay is not very complicated. So it all comes down to the subtle complexity of the strategy and planning. Those early mistakes will haunt you later, more than even the ghostly figures that the character will start to see as their sanity begins to slip. You're there every step of the way, which makes even the most inevitable deaths feel emotionally devastating. One of the things that I love about Insurmountable is that it doesn't take very long to complete a session. The 3 mountains increase in size and complexity, but they only take between 60 and 90 minutes to complete. The climbs are designed to be doable in a single sitting, and the quick pacing will keep the momentum going right through to the final descent. And even though the story is sparse, there are enough events happening in each session to make it feel unique and satisfying. Those moments when you barely complete a climb come with a wave of relief, only to be quickly followed by the feeling of dread when you remember that you're in bad shape going to the next mountain. But for as unique as the sessions tend to be, there's no denying that you'll run into a lot of repeating events. For example, I'm pretty sure that I twisted my ankle on loose rocks in every single climb. You'll also run into a lot of the same people and scenarios. Of course, there are times when this is actually good because you can predict how an event will play out. However, it does make the levels feel a bit samey over time. That isn't helped by the fact that the various mountains all look the same. Sure, you'll run into different storms and terrain, but it would have been nice to see more variety to the graphics and colors. I wish we were going to different mountains around the world, giving us slightly different environments and tiles. The very few complaints I have about Insurmountable mostly revolve around the game's repetition, which really only becomes more apparent with each playthrough. The visuals, on the other hand, are good, but they're almost secondary to what is happening. When I remember my tense climbs where I barely made it back alive, I'm not going to be picturing a tiny character slowly walking from one space to another, but rather an epic man versus nature struggle that's almost cinematic. That's the impression the game leaves in my brain, even if the graphics are nowhere near that detailed. Too bad the music and sound effects are the weak link in the presentation, because they really could have added a lot to the immersion. But look, when a game is this intense and engrossing, you'll barely notice the simplistic graphics and sparse sound effects. I don't need a sweeping soundtrack to know how I feel about a game like Insurmountable, because my constant fear of making the wrong choice and dying is enough to keep me thoroughly invested in this incredible game. By mixing strategy and survival elements, Insurmountable has found a unique way to put you in the head of a mountain climber. Every move and decision matters here, creating one of the year's most tense and nerve-wracking experiences. Don't let the simple point-and-click gameplay fool you, because this is a harrowing journey that will test your ability to not only plan, but also think on your feet. And while it can be a little repetitive and the sound design is barely there, the procedurally generated mountains are massive, and surviving the climb is always satisfying. I would never climb a mountain in real life, but I can see myself coming back to Insurmountable time and time again. Just don't forget to keep breathing. Hey, thanks for watching our review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What is a video game activity you would never do in real life? Obviously, there's a lot of stuff in games that you won't do in real life, especially when it comes to violence. But what else? I'm actually really excited to hear your thoughts, because this could go real serious or real silly. Let me know in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back shortly with reviews of Buildings Have Feelings 2, Swan, Chernobyl Unexplored, Astro, Aqua Kitty, and so much more. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,